On today's video, I'm going to dive really deep into the new website that we have for Flux Academy and dissect all the different interactions and cool effects that we've achieved there with Webflow alone. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, what is up? So as some of you know, we've recently launched a completely new website for Flux Academy, and we tried to expand what's possible to do with Webflow and check out all the creative possibilities of using interactions and using the layout tools. And today I want to show you how we've done most of the cool things on the website. So let's see what we'll cover. The first thing that we'll cover is how we've created this pretty cool loading effect for the website, and then how we have all of these loading or scrolling interaction of all of these things going into the head of this statue here in the hero section. What else am I going to cover? So we have this pretty cool kind of community thing here, which kind of reacts to my mouth, and when I hover over the things, you can see the name and country of the student. That's pretty cool. Let's explore that. And one of my favorite things that I want to break down here is how we've created this team here, team thing that you can just scroll here, and it's kind of like a wave of all the team members growing here and reacting to your mouse. So let's dive into the Webflow and see how we've created these things. So let's start off with the loading animation. Now, before I actually go and show you how I did this in Webflow, I want to explain kind of the concept. A lot of these things are actually not very difficult to do once you understand what we're actually trying to do here. So I'll use Keynote to kind of draw things. So let's say we have the website, right? This is the original website. Now we want to create this effect. And on the website, we have this, let's say we have the text here. Let's say this is the text here at the top. So in order to create the loader, basically we want to first create kind of a layer that's going to sit on top of all of that, right? So how are we going to create something that sits on top of it? We're probably going to position it using absolute or fixed position, where we then can increase the kind of layers that we have. Now, on this overlaying layer, I want to have another kind of text with actually the same text, but it's going to be with a different color, right? Because here the color is white. And let's dive into the homepage. And now in the intro animation, it's actually purple, right? So it's going to be a duplicate that's going to look like it's sitting in the exact same position, but on top of it with different color. And obviously this is going to be, right, this pinkish background with a different color as well. Now, these things, I'm going to, in order to reveal them, basically what I want to do is animate the height of this thing that wraps it together. But because I want the things to actually disappear, right? And so what I'll do is I'll make sure that this thing that wraps the overlay has what's called overflow hidden, which basically means that if this thing gets smaller, we're not going to see these elements that are outside of it. And that's how we're going to create this effect. Let's say that this is white, where actually we see half of it is with the original color and the half of it is with the new color. So I hope you understood kind of the theory of how I've planned this. Now let's see how this is actually built. So we have this loader wrapper. Originally, right now, it's hidden just so we can see the website. So let's put the display on. All right, and now you can actually see what we have here. So basically, we have two things here. We have a loader that's actually loading until the website is loaded. That's the line that you have here. I don't know if we can see it. So that's kind of, this is the line of that's animating until the whole website is loaded. And once it's loaded, we're triggering the next animation. So they're both here. So we have this thing, and then we have the loader wrap. And as you can see, the loader wrap, as I've mentioned, it has an overflow hidden. And so, and the height is 100%. And so you understand that as we're going to animate the height, what's going to happen is we're going to not see the purple type. Right? Now you understand basically what's animating is the height of this wrapper, and that's basically how we're revealing this thing. So let's undo everything that I've done here. And the second thing that happens, right? The second thing that happens, what did I do here? Probably ruined my own website. All right. All right, so the second thing that happens is the text goes in floating in line by line, and it also has a rotation. Now the way to do that is actually break out this text into 3 different lines and wrap each of them in kind of a wrapper. Why are we wrapping them? Because using the same concept that we just talked about of the overflow hidden, when we move the text within the inside of this wrapper, it's actually going to hide it. That's how we're going to create this reveal effect, where it's actually coming into this visible area, right? This is kind of like creating a mask. So let's actually dive into the animation so you can see how this thing is actually built. So let's go here. So we have, let's see, page load. All right, loading animation. All right, so when the page starts loading, we have this line animation. I'm not going to dive into this, but what I want to show you is when the page finishes loading. And then we have here a bunch of animation, home intro animation. So here's what we have. So the loader wrapper that we talked about is basically animating from a height of 100 to down below a height of 0. Right? That's one thing that happens. And here we have basically the 3 lines of text moving from outside of their actual wrapper. So they're not visible, but then they're moving inside and they're rotating at the same time. So basically every line is rotating inside the mask while rotating, and they're doing it stacked one after another. So the first one is triggered, and then 0.2 seconds later, the second one is triggered, and then the third one, right? So that's line number 1, line number 2, and line number 3. So we're using here the concepts of masks by using the overflow hidden, and we're stacking the animation. So line 1, line 2, line 3, while the actual wrapper of the whole thing is shutting down. And once it's done, we're removing this whole thing. We're making it display none so that we can keep interacting with the actual website. All right, so that is kind of the main intro animation of the website. Let's go ahead and hide this wrapper, this loader. Now let's talk about the hero scroll. So what do we have here? We have these few elements that are kind of like moving slowly. They're always kind of floating out there in space. And when I'm starting to scroll, they're moving inside the head, but also something else happens. You can notice that, check out this kind of cursor. It also rotates. All right, so basically we have 2 things going on here. The little movement and actually the movement into the area of the head, that's very easy to do with changing the position using Webflow's native animation. So that's very easy to do with Webflow alone. But rotating the actual cursor and the elements, making them actually rotating, that's not possible. That's actually 3D. So that's not possible to do with Webflow alone. So what we had to do is these objects were created by Chris, our designer. He rendered them in Cinema 4D. And so he actually created the whole animation of the thing, you know, of the element rotating, and exported it as a loading animation. So basically we have here 2 animations that happens at the same time. One is movement. First of all, we have a looping animation, right? So these elements just slowly moving in place, and that kind of gives movement and kind of like feeling like the website is breathing. And that interaction happens with, I think, let's see. Yeah, page load. So when the page finishes loading, it's called home objects hero move. And you can see this is actually a looping animation. Let's go back here and we can see that this is a looping animation. You can see that the loop here is tagged, and they're just moving. Each of these elements, we're just moving them relative to where they are right now. Now, one more thing that you can see is that right now, it looks like all the objects are here in the middle. But actually, when we're previewing the website, you can see that they're all in different location. And the reason is the second interaction, the interaction that actually moves them into the position inside of the head. So that's done in a different interaction. Let's see that. That's actually a page scroll interaction, okay? So we have here, basically that's an interaction that's triggering and moving along as we're scrolling the page. And what happens here is you can see based on the percentage of our scroll, this is the first initial position. So now they are being positioned in their actual original position when we are at 0%, meaning when we're at the top of the page, they're being moved into their original position. And as we're starting to scroll down, they're being moved into the actual position. All right, so if I'll do live preview on, you'll be able to see that as we scroll, now we're at 3%, now we're at 6%, they're actually being moved into the right position. Now, together with this movement of their position, we're also triggering here the Lottie interaction, which basically means, remember, these elements are actually Lottie animation that have, frames that they're moving. So basically, alongside with the scroll, we're saying don't just move them, also play the Lottie video, right? From frame 1 to frame 100, or I don't remember how many frames they have. So that's basically what's going on. All of these things are moving together with position, and also their Lottie is playing. And that's basically how we've created this whole hero animation. So took us a while to figure out how can we create something cool that is not, because originally we thought about making the whole thing like a 3D video, but that would just weight too much. It was so heavy. But these actual Lottie files, and you can see them here at the here in our asset panel, expand asset, thank you. They're actually not that. So these are the JSON, and you can see that they're rotating here. They're actually not that big, right? So this is 200 kilobytes. It's not that big for an actual 3D animation. So that's the way we kind of created something that's pretty cool, but not super heavy. Let's dive into the other interaction that I wanted to cover, which is this this community hero here, and that's a symbol, as you can see, because it's actually being used in multiple pages throughout the website. Now, originally we were thinking about creating this using some kind of, like, I don't know if you know the JavaScript, I think it's called D3 or something like that, that creates like graphs that you can interact with. We thought about this, it became too complicated, so at the end of the day, we just created it. Just plain native Webflow, and the way that we did this is, you can see it took a while, just like 1-2 hours of work to actually do this. So basically, it's just like visual images. It's called community item, and inside of it, there's the image of the person and then their name and flag. So that's just like manually positioned, and they're positioned in absolute position. And the reason is we wanted them to be kind of responsive, and I wanted to create their positioning relative with percentage to the size of the screen, so it will be able to be responsive. So each item has, the image, the name, and the flag, and we have a class interaction. A class interaction means that every one of these community items, we've created one interaction, which basically means when you hover this element, change the opacity and show the flag and name. And because they all have the same class, creating just one class interaction would affect all of these elements. So I didn't have to create like 30 different interactions for each of them, like hover interaction. The interaction actually is combined with their class. So that's one thing. Oh, so by the way, so we have these community items, and then below we have the community connectors. So that's basically just like lines that I created by creating like a div that's one pixel of height, and then just rotated it. So basically it's divs with a background color. That's how I created the line, and I just positioned them. So it's a lot of manual work of positioning, but again, this whole thing took like 2 hours to set up and create the interaction for it. Now, how I've created the interaction for it is, let's go here into mouth moving in viewport. All right, so mouse moving in viewport basically means that no matter where your mouth is on the screen, the things inside of this interaction are actually going to react to it. So basically what we have here is, and that's pretty long because we have so many elements here, right? We have like 30 objects here. Each of them I had to basically says, all right, If the mouse is on the left, move to the left. If the mouse is on the right, move to the right. And I've switched up the values sometimes because I didn't want them all to move in together, left and right together. I wanted it to create kind of a feeling of interaction. So when I'm moving my mouse to the left, some of them are actually moving to the left, some of them are actually moving to the right. That kind of creates the feeling of depth. So basically, as you can see, I basically had to really create manually one by one what happens with the x-axis when they're moving left and right, and then what happens when I move up and down. It's the same thing. Move them up and down. Some of them change the values. So it's pretty, I don't know how to say this, handmade, right? It took a lot of manual labor, but again, to create this whole thing, like 2 hours, I feel like it's pretty solid. And the way this is structured is, what's their position in the 0 and what's their position in the 100. So what happens if the mouse is at the top of the screen or at the bottom, at the left and the right. So that's how the mouse and viewport interaction works. The last thing I want to show you, and that I actually struggled with or thought about how to do for quite a while, is the about page interaction that we have here. All right, so this is the interaction. Let's go here that I showed you at the beginning, where it's kind of creates this wave effect based on how I moved. So I've tried multiple different things to try to figure out how to create this wavy effect. And the way that this is also an interaction that mouse is moving in viewport, and you can actually see it here. So in this page has 1, 2, 3. It actually has a different interaction for all of them. Now I could have made them, and basically let's see how this works, right? So for run, this is what happens for the element that is called run. What happens? So this element has, the photo of me, but also have this kind of like lower gradient to allow for the text to be readable, and has the name, the title, and the flag. So originally, basically what I'm saying is, if the mouse is all the way to the left, make sure that these things are not visible and the size is very, very small and the text is not opacity. Now, I needed to understand, I needed to do a little bit of math to this. So I had to basically create, I don't remember how many team members we have, like 8 or something, and then decide, okay, so the left and right of the mouse is 100. So, and we need to divide that by 8. Now, doing this, understanding what's, let's say, 100 divided by 8, I understood where each of them, at what point, let's say the thing was 8%, right? So at 8%, run is going to be bigger. And then 8 plus 8, that's, let's say, 16. The next one, Noah, is going to be big. And then the next one is 16 or 17 plus 8, and that's the next one. So that's kind of the, let's call it, keyframe for each one of these team members to be big. And then basically what I said here is, when you start off, it's 0, and then at 8, it becomes its biggest, and then at 17, it goes back into being small. So that's basically how I created these keyframes. And the reason that I broke it into 8 or whatever different interactions is because I could basically duplicate the interaction. So what I did is I created the interaction for run, duplicated it, and then just changed the numbers of the keyframes, and just you can choose when you're doing an interaction, when you're working in interaction. So let's say this is for Noah. You can do some, if you right click, you can change the target. So basically I've duplicated the interaction, change the target from one team member to the next, change the number of the keyframe, basically saying plus 8 to the percentage, right? So 17 plus 8, 25 plus 8, 33 times 8. And that's how I basically duplicated 8 times, just changed the numbers, and it kind of created the flow, because they're also staggered one after the other one. So for both of these interactions, for this interaction and also for the intro animation, it's really useful for me to think about before I dive into Webflow and actually executed this. It's really helpful for me to sit down with a piece of paper, sketch this out, and think logically about actually what's going to happen. That really helps me to kind of plan and then build out the interaction logically and pretty easily. Again, as I said, I could have created this whole team section area with one interaction and create all of it, but it's really much easier to just duplicate, and change the numbers and change the target. All right, I think that covers the most cool things that I like in this website. If there's any more elements on this website that you want me to break down, I'd love to do it. Let me know in the comments below. Of course, if you want to learn more about Webflow and dive deeper, we have a free web class that's going to be linked below this video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.